Oh, God. What? What? Where am I?
Wretched YouTuber. Did you really think you could escape?
Who the hell are you?
You already knew.
Oh, God. Oh, no. What do you want?
Make the video. You need to fulfill your pact.
I thought I got away from you.
Foolish widow Daz, you signed away your soul long ago.
Stupid fucking Catgirl. I never should have sold my soul anyway. Demons are bullshit. No. Good evening. If you're a regular viewer of mine, your first thought is probably, oh shit, Das is making another weeb video again. Or optionally, the more likely response of, that's him, that's the white boy, in real. But then you probably noticed the video length and were instantly bewitched into my secret evil spell called Pure Curiosity Bait. For context, many eons ago, I made a follower goal for about 100 Twitch followers that I would make a Nekopara lore video. Now that goal passed quite a while ago, and many years later, here we are. As it happens, having fun making content that I enjoy kind of took over my life a bit, as it tends to do, and I didn't get much work done on this script. But now it's time to get down to brass tacks and finish this shit show. So creating a Nekopara lore video may sound like a weird thing to do. After all, Nekopara is just a shallow, pastel-colored, fan service-laden visual novel. I'm sorry. You tend to think that Nekopara is just a weeb-bait Catgirl game full of non-stop egregious amounts of both types of anime pussy? You fool. You absolute idiot. You brainless buffoon. This game is a absolute motherfucking mess of completely insane, contrived explanations to otherwise mundane questions that lead to so many horrifying suggestions. Just absolutely batshit world building. The canon of this game is something to behold, and I have beheld it. Good lord, have I beheld it. So allow me to introduce myself. My name is Das Zombes, and I'm the world's first Catgirl lore expert. For the last several years, I have spent many hours playing through every single game on and off stream, checking up on most of the spin-offs and the other types of supplementary media, as well as watching all the anime adaptations, and taking physical notes on them in a notebook. I'm serious. There's like 12 pages of notes in this thing, no stone unturned. I even watched the 18+ scenes for the extra lore. No other reasons, I promise. Now, spoiler alert, there weren't many hidden lore things in the NSFW scenes. It wasn't really important that I watched it. Anyways, for those of you not familiar, Nekopara is a multimedia franchise that shows us a world where catgirls are real. However, because the game is a visual novel, and questions as to the logistics of how catgirls are real will inevitably arise, they try to explain why and how catgirls exist, and what changes society has made to incorporate them. Now, usually the answers are simply to allow the specific plot points needed for our main character to absolutely decimate this video's age rating with as little effort as humanly possible on his part. They basically just fall into his lap. He really doesn't have to do much besides exist and actually legally own the Catgirls. They are property. But I'll elaborate more on that when we get to the Catgirl civil rights section of the video. Yes, you heard me correctly. Catgirl civil rights. This is going to be a fun video. So before that though, content warning. We're talking about civil rights, slavery, manipulation, grooming, bestiality, abuse, eugenics, incest, pedophilia, and finally, just a fuckload of anime. This is probably the most anime that I've ever seen in any piece of media. It's gonna be one of those kind of videos. Anyway, this game has a whole lot to unpack, and not just in the Catgirl we live in a society way. Let's start off simple with how Catgirls function as biological beings in this universe. Alright, lab coat Das here. Yes, I did buy this lab coat 5 months ago. I told you that this video took me a while. Anyway, let's posit a simple question. What is a Catgirl? Now, you might want to say a girl with cat ears and maybe a cat tail, and in any other series you'd be pretty somewhat correct in your very simple explanation, but not here. allow me to give you the definition I have come to after months of studying this game. A catgirl is a genetically modified cat made to look like a human with cat ears and a tail, containing multiple features in common with house cats. You heard me right. They are not genetically modified humans. They are genetically modified cats. Instead of taking the easy route and making humans with cat-like features, they took evolution and cranked that shit in reverse and went all the way around in order to turn cats into primates, basically. This means that catgirls are not only very far removed different species from humans, but also likely have wildly different internal chemistry. To put this into perspective, catgirls have an enhanced sense of smell. This is known. They share habits with cats related to smelling. They have similar reactions to negative stimuli. This could be seen as them having almost the exact same sense of smell as cats. This means that they have 14 times the odor sensors as well as a vomeronasal organ in the back of their mouth. So not only would the structure of your mouth have to be changed to compensate, they would also likely need a much bigger nasal cavity. Where the fuck would it all go? Do they just have a gigaschnoz that we can't see because of the anime art style? But we'll get into the anatomical differences from humans. Trust me, we will. So, do you remember when I said that the 18 plus scenes didn't tell me all that much? That was a lie. Lore hides everywhere. So, behold, a full anatomical, purely scientific, and perfectly illustrated graph of a catgirl in the Nekopara universe. Each label points to a notable difference from basic human biology. We will go over all of them, starting with the most notable feature, the one that everybody's talking about, the cat ears. Now, an astute eye may at first recognize that the ears mesh almost perfectly with the hair, almost looking like a natural extension of their hair. There is no bald catgirl shown in Nekopara. We have no idea what they look like otherwise. What we do know is that catgirl hearing is significantly more advanced than human hearing. This can mean that certain noises that irritate cats will also irritate catgirls. The ears are also very sensitive, but not sensitive like a pressure point or a patch of recently healed scar tissue. These motherfuckers are what I like to call hentai sensitive, which means that if you touch that spot, the catgirl makes this face. Fun. The ears provide a very unique conundrum when we think about the internal anatomy. Even on a non-anime model with normal-sized eyes, the ear canal would have to be either small enough to run perpendicular to the brain and the skull, or the brain would have to accommodate in size for the misplaced ear canals. Potentially, it could, expand sideways, forcing the skull to be wider, as the brain takes up spaces previously taken up by the human ear placement. Oh shit, wait, sorry, I forgot. We don't actually know if they have only 2 ears. Every single catgirl that we see, even the ones as young as 3 months old, have a full head of at least shoulder-length hair. We also never see a short-haired catgirl. This means that we have absolutely no idea whether or not they have human ears, because it's always covered by hair. Now see, this would be a conundrum in 2020, but with the release of Catboy Paradise, 3 years ago, I'm not gonna check, we now have a short-haired cat person. Oh yeah. Catboys exist, I forgot to mention. Our savior comes in the form of Sage, a suitably short-haired, Dilfy catboy that leaves little to no doubt in our mind that they do in fact have only 2 ears. As far as I can tell, I am the first person to document this connection. I will take my award in the mail. So the next feature, about as equally noticeable, is the tail, and it's much more interesting to talk about. The tail of a catgirl is an extension of their spine, and is about 1/3 of their height long on average, though the tail can differ in length and appearance with different individuals. But we'll get to that when we specify breeds. The tail is fully prehensile and seems to serve no balance-related purpose. In fact, it seems to serve 2 purposes, being like a 5th limb and being a method to express emotions. This tail can droop sadly, bob back and forth, or even become erect when experiencing pleasure. Yes, that is a real sentence. We're talking about tails here, by the way. Though that doesn't change the fact that there is a scene where one of the catgirls fillets the tail of another. Nothing will ever change that. I'm never going to be the same. Oh yeah, also, the tail is hentai sensitive too, but you probably could have guessed that. There's more than one scene involving tail play, actually. It's just that scene snuck up on me. I really just wasn't expecting it. Now, let's talk about another slightly less interesting anatomical difference, the eyes. Besides the oversized eyes inherent to anime, catgirls do seem to have larger eyes than their human counterparts, though that might just be me going insane. But that's far from the only thing I have to say about catgirl eyes. Did you know that their pupils are actually slits? This isn't really something that is spoken about in the games, but it is something that literally appears in the art, so that's helpful. This does also imply that catgirls have the ability to see in the dark to a similar degree to cats. This is backed up with discussion regarding Maple peeing herself. I swear I'm not lying, it's there. This seeing in the dark also suggests that catgirl eyes can glow, just like how cats and dogs' eyes will glow in photographs and videos and such. I'll not really get into it, but here's some funny art that was made for me a literal year ago. Thanks for that. Moving on, the mouth, starting with the tongue. Catgirl tongues are very similar, if not close to identical to regular cat tongues. They have similar habits to lick things when experiencing joy, and their tongues are covered in the same keratin papillae that make cat tongues feel rough. It's basically just the exact same tongue, but it's slightly rough. It doesn't really bring up too many extensions of the biology, but it definitely is a difference. Wow. Now for the teeth. Catgirl teeth appear to be a homogenized variant of human teeth, as they likely possess anywhere from 30 to 32 of them. Most of their teeth appear to be flat human teeth, though their incisors are greatly lengthened. Though, to be fair, this could also just be moe nonsense, but I'm counting it anyways because it makes sense. Time for a lightning round so we can move on from this hellish fucking graph. Claws. Catgirl nails are harder and usually sharper than human nails, but do not possess the extendable quality of regular cat claws. Despite this, they have a habit of scratching up all your shit when bored anyways. Next up, hair. Catgirls have hair on their heads, their tails, and that's about it. They very likely don't possess hair in any other places, not a pube nor armpit hair in sight. Now, maybe they're just really good at shaving, and maybe the cat boys are different, but we don't know because we don't see them naked. Catgirl hair appears to be a similar texture to human hair, though it likely does have some different shit going on, as it is described as softer than human hair and requires different shampoo to wash effectively. Now for reproduction. This will be fun. Catgirls can reproduce with cat boys, but not humans. However, they have no issue having sex with humans, despite this fact. There is plenty of source material for this claim, and trust me, it only gets more uncomfortable from here. Another thing is that catgirls experience estrus, or heat. And no, as much as hentai would like you to believe, human females do not go into heat. This heat isn't really expanded upon, but we know a few things about it. 1, it makes the catgirls horny when they experience it. No way, that's so hard to guess. 2, it affects their restraint notably. And 3, there are no negative side effects to a catgirl getting no dick during her heat. Now, in terms of internal anatomy, cats for the most part have similar organs to humans, though catgirls likely do not have an appendix, as well as the previously mentioned vomeronasal organ in their head for picking up unique scents such as pheromones. The existence of this organ is proven with their reaction to catnip, being at least somewhat similar to regular cats, though the reason why regular cats get affected by catnip is because catnip mimics feline sex hormones, so it makes them horny and they really want to snuggle up to things. But here it just makes the catgirls act like they're drunk, which is confusing, because like, why would it do that? Finally, a notable but significantly less scientific element. Catgirls universally have more agility, endurance, and strength than humans. There is an entire episode of the anime dedicated to shows of athletic ability, where we see 2 of the catgirls perform quite tough activities with absolutely no prior training or exercise. The primary areas of increased agility relate to jumping and running and climbing. For example, in another episode, Maple is able to climb a vertical stone chimney that is at least 15 feet tall without any equipment to help her. And Coconut is stated to be able to reliably outrun a mini truck, which tops out at around 75 miles per hour according to Google. Jesus fuck. Anyways, now that the internal anatomy is mostly done, we have one more thing to discuss before moving on to easily the weirdest aspect of catgirl biology. So, catgirls, as you might see, they don't all look the same. They have different heights as well as different hair color, hair texture, and tail types. This is because catgirls all have different breeds. These breeds are honestly pretty one-to-one with real-life cat breeds. They're even named the same. For example, this Catgirl, Coconut, is a Maine Coon, and this Catgirl right here is a Munchkin cat. They have a very notably different physicality, different tails, and different growth patterns. This particular idea of breeds is certainly interesting, but it's usually just a way to explain off genetic differences that are explained in humanity by ethnicity. But that's enough about how writers justify their character designs. Time for probably the weirdest aspect of the franchise. Let's discuss Catgirl lifespan and growth. Starting off with probably the single weirdest writing decision I have ever seen in any dating simulator since this abomination came into the world. These Catgirls, characters that you are supposed to be attracted to and you see having intercourse multiple times, age in cat years. On simpler terms, see this large and varied group of Catgirls? None of them are over 4 years old. See these two Catgirls? The first two Catgirls that our main character enters into a sexual relationship with? Both of these characters are 9 months old. Catgirls reach sexual maturity at just around 9 months, as that is when these two first enter heat. This means that in 9 months they grow between 92 and 118 centimeters, assuming they are all born at around 50 centimeters in height, and their growth is uniform, which we know it's not, because human growth isn't uniform. Though it is also suggested in Nekopara Extra that Coconut specifically grew 6 centimeters in a single day. Jesus fucking Christ. Though to be fair, that could just be hyperbole. Either way, do you have any idea how much nutrition growth like that would take? You could probably actively see them grow. Imagine the growth pains. For the first year of their life, Catgirls would be constantly suffering aching pain throughout their entire bodies. Now, not to mention the absolute speed at which they would have to grow mentally, though in some cases, that's not particularly notable. Okay, I hear you. You understand that the growth is weird, but what about the Catgirl lifestyle? How is their behavior any different from humans? Well, first off, their diet. Now, Catgirls actually have an almost identical diet to humans, and there are no mentioned foods that are poisonous to Catgirls that aren't poisonous to humans, or vice versa. Best example is the amount of chocolate consumed by Catgirls in Volume 4, though this does not mean that their palate is identical to humans, as they universally adore stereotypically cat foods, such as raw tuna and cat food. Yes, you heard me right, because nothing says moe like watching an anime girl eat cat food. They do also get drunk from alcohol, which isn't too notable. I just kind of felt like I needed to include it. Catgirls do have a tendency to develop insane shonen protagonist level appetites. This is likely just an anime trope included for the sake of the classic comedy that the series is known for, but it actually kind of makes sense considering how much growth they would have to be going through. In terms of behavior, most of the time they overlap cleanly with human behavior, though they seem to have notable differences that cause hang-ups in care and integration into society, at least according to the logic of the game. The most notable one is based on how they see sexual and romantic relationships, which is to say that they are nearly universally polyamorous, or at least don't mind polyamory in relationships. Now, this probably doesn't actually have much to do with scientific context, despite how much the game wants to tell you, and only exists so that our protagonist can dick down as many Catgirls as he wants. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, because Catgirls do struggle in a couple things, such as, for example, impulse control. Catgirls oftentimes will purr on reflex when scratched under the chin. They'll pounce or strike at insects, small animals, or cat toys, as well as having a notable phlegm response to certain scents. This sort of behavior is one of the major plot points of Volume 1, but I'll get into that when I cover the Society of Nekopara. But before we get into that, though, we'll need to cover a few more things. The first of which is the large display of Catgirls that appears within the games. This will lead into more discussions of biology, but let's cover them one by one, shall we? Starting off with the two main girls of Volume 1, Chocola and Vanilla. Chocola is a dark-haired mixed-breed Catgirl that honestly really shows her age in the mental department, as in she's a completely fucking worthless dumbass. She is unable to read kanji, speaks like a young child, and is mostly incapable of doing physically demanding tasks such as waiting tables. Now, normally I would say that this half-hearted attempt at moe comedy is bad writing, but according to the wiki, this level of stupidity is actually fitting, as she and Vanilla are only 9 months old. Speaking of Vanilla, as previously mentioned, the other 9-month-old cat, but contrary to Chocola, she is actually a passively written character, using the notably low standards of Nekopara, that is. She's more like a poorly constructed ball of 3-ish tropes with some mildly entertaining dialogue. Those 3 tropes being kudere, tsundere, and siscon. She is a white-haired mixed-breed catgirl and is the biological sister of Chocola, which really puts certain scenes in questionable context, but baby, at this point, the context is nothing but questionable. Next to Azuki, short, angry munchkin cat, oldest of the bunch, still only 3 years old. Cool, love this series. Next up, Coconut, giant fucking Maine Coon, 1 year old, has heterochromia, also calls the protagonist Oni-chan. That's not a weird dynamic at all, totally normal. Sick character writing, nekoworks. Next two Catgirls. First off, Maple. She's a snooty American curl and actually kind of a normal character. She's the only one that actually picks out her own clothes and is seen as the mature one of the group. Next up, Cinnamon, the Scottish fold with absolutely giant fucking titties and a chronic problem of being the most annoying character in the game. Her only joke, the only joke that she does, is that she gets horny. That's it. That's the only thing that she does. Every time that anything slightly sexual, or even something that's not sexual at all, is mentioned, she will go into heat and just absolutely start to drool over everything. It's so annoying. I hate it. Anyway, there's also two more, but they're not part of the main crew. First off, this is Milk. She's a Russian blue and is 7 months old. She may look very young, but be aware, she is only 60 days younger than the two that the main character has regular intercourse with. Yay! Finally, Phrase. She's a French catgirl and a chinchilla Persian. She's really not that interesting. Now, let's discuss how breeds affect growth and anatomy. Yeah, okay, this is going to be a real short section because it's kind of obvious. It's pretty one-to-one with actual cats. Breeds usually determine height, tail shape, hair color, and hair texture. Best examples are Azuki and Coconut. Bam, I don't even need to say anything more than that. It's real obvious. We have absolutely no idea about whether or not breeds apply to skin texture. Every character is the same skin color. Because this is an anime game, black people don't exist, only people with slight tans. Finally, the last thing in the biology section. I mentioned it earlier. What the fuck are catboys? Is anything different? Well, we don't actually know if Catboy Paradise is canon, but catboys are confirmed to exist. They're just comfortably out of sight, because the only attraction here is towards women. We can't have hot men that can reasonably challenge our main character's protagonist with his harem. That would rile up the fans. They can't have that. I kid, but there are absolutely no shown catboys outside of Catboy's Paradise. They do exist, though. As far as I know, they're just surprisingly boring, because they're just catgirls, but they're boys. Who could have seen this coming? Everything that applies to catgirls also applies to catboys, outside of the obvious things like genitalia and a bit of their physicality. Okay. Right, that does it for the biology section. Is anybody else getting tired of seeing my mug? I'm just kind of tired of holding this microphone. I'll hand y'all over to VoiceOver DOS now. Hello, and welcome to the next section of the video, the series recap. In this section, I am going to speedrun talking about the events of the series. Stay with me, this will be rough and not particularly well done. But it's mostly just irrelevant context that I feel I need to include in a video explaining Nekopara. So, starting from the top, this is the Minataki household. It holds a long line of Japanese confectioners, the current generation being Kasho Minataki and Shigure Minataki. Kasho is approximately 25 years old, and Shigure's in that nebulous anime age where if the writers specified, they'd probably go to jail. Don't worry, what you think might happen doesn't happen. They also have 6 catgirls. The order from oldest to youngest goes Azuki, Maple, Cinnamon, Coconut, Vanilla, Chocola. We described each of them earlier. I'm not going to do it again. Kasho has a bit of a struggle in his day-to-day life. See, he wants nothing more than to bake Western sweets, but his father's a big old grumpy dude who wants him to continue the family business. On the other hand, Shigure is a total fucking creep with a brother complex so intense and overpowering, it causes her to need medical attention several times throughout the story. She has her own section. We'll get to her. The first game of the timeline is Nekopara Extra, in which Chocolate and Vanilla have just been adopted into the family. Now, this may look like it takes place several years before the main story, but keep in mind, they are only 4 months younger here than they are in the first game. I'm fully aware of the problems. In Nekopara Extra, nothing interesting really happens. It's almost entirely just a story of Chocolate and Vanilla getting accepted into the Monarchy household. It's a multiple quotation marks wholesome backstory game. Next up, in Nekopara Volume 0, nothing happens, but it's like an hour shorter. Finally, Kasho does the thing that starts the plot, and he moves out of the Monarchy household without telling anybody. He packs up his shit and leaves to a bakery across the city that he's started up. Kasho's bakery is called La Soleil, meaning the sun in French. It was also a name taken from the French bakery he interned at in France. Kasho just kind of wants to live on his own for a bit, away from his family, but unfortunately, God is not so merciful, and he receives 2 large boxes at his door that he didn't ship. These boxes contain the 2 Catgirls, Chocolate and Vanilla. At first, Kasho is determined to send them back home, but they unfortunately insist on staying. Nothing really happens here until Shigure shows up and reintroduces herself into her brother's life to his vast misfortune. From there, they go on dates, and La Soleil is filled with new workers, you'll never guess who, and we add 2 Catgirls to the tally of girls Kasho has had sex with. Volume 2 has us learn a little more about the world, primarily the attitudes of Catgirls towards their predicament. Hint, hint, Azuki is the only one that shows any form of issue with it, and it's played primarily as a joke. Sure, game, but we'll get into that later. Coconut is depressed, and Azuki has image problems. Kasho solves both of them, and the solution to both of them is sex. 2 more of the tally. Volume 3 is the longest of every single one of the games, and it's probably my favorite to actually play, because it's actually kind of well written, though it does have the tail filleting scene in it, and it isn't skipped if you don't have the 18+ patch. It stays in the game. Besides that, though, this volume focuses primarily on the musical journey of Maple and Cinnamon, as they learn to overcome the stigma towards Catgirl artists and make themselves known. Wow, that's minorly lore important, as it focuses on the Catgirl's role in society, unlike literally everything else. This volume does also semi-confirm the fact that Catgirls can be bisexual at the very least, though unfortunately the 2 characters that have that sort of relationship are stepsisters, so it can't all be good. Anyway, after Kasho helps Maple and Cinnamon get up on stage and they reverse racism by being good at singing, he has sex with them and we add 2 more to the tally. All ends well, as you could expect. Volume 4 focuses almost entirely on the drama within the Monarchy family, so it doesn't really matter for us. We'll get into it when we get to it. No girls are added in this one, and that brings us more or less up to speed. Fucking psych! We still have to talk about Catboy Paradise. So, sometime before Nekopara Volume 4, Nekoworks released a little April Fool's game called Nekopara Catboy Paradise. I mentioned it earlier with Sage, who's one of the Catboys that shows up in that game, but the debacle of this game is entirely in whether or not it's actually canon, because this game has several things that make me question its canonicity. First off, it's an April Fool's game with no ties to any of the characters seen in the main series, but also, there's just a lot of lore inconsistencies, such as, for example, the Catboys not having bells but still being able to walk outside, which could be something that properly exists in this universe too, but overall, we're not talking about Catboys, and therefore, I'm making the executive decision as the single known scholar of Nekopara lore to deem this entry of the series non-canon, because that means I don't have to write more script and actually study Catboy Paradise and make a theory about it. Anyways, now that that's out of the way, we can start to talk about probably the most fucked up part of Nekopara lore, though that's honestly a subjective statement because the age thing is probably the most off-putting part of it. But like, anime has done weird age stuff like that before. What it hasn't done before is make an entire societal system that is so fucked up and insidious that it spawned this video and then shove it to the back and never actually explain on it ever. Yes. The Society of Nekopara is truly, in my opinion, the most disturbing part of this entire game. So let's get into it. Alright, before we discuss how society treats catgirls, we should probably discuss what a catgirl is again, but this time in the legal sense. So, catgirls are sentient entities with free will and the ability to have their own agency, at least biologically, right? They're just as smart as humans and have the potential to become functional members of society. Well, unfortunately, the government in the Nekopara games would have to disagree with you, because despite this, the Catgirls are second-class citizens. That's right, you heard those words come out of my mouth when referring to the Catgirl game. Catgirls are in a class of citizenship where they are technically pets, despite their obvious sentience. But before we discuss what owned Catgirls are able to do, we should discuss strays. The life of a stray Catgirl is very similar to the life of a stray cat. You do not have clothes, and you are not brought up with the ability to speak. You are treated as an animal by society. You have to steal for food. You are by all means considered a pest. Police officers round up stray Catgirls and put them into pounds. Presuming that those pounds have the same culture as modern pounds, including euthanasia, you heard me right, this is subtext in Nekopara. They never say anything to counter any of my theories here, presumably because I'm the only person who cares about the lore in this Catgirl hentai game. Anyways, what happens if you're not a stray? Well, depending on the household that you're brought up in, you can either be raised in a similar method to a cat, or almost as a child to the homeowners. Apparently, being taught to speak at all is rare, only really being a luxury afforded by richer Catgirls whose owners have time to raise them like children. So you're essentially a human child, but you're in constant growth pains, as mentioned, and are an adult by the end of the first year. And then you have to live in a society where you're treated as a pet. But how far does that go? Well, let's start with the most obvious. A young Catgirl cannot leave the house alone. She will be treated as a stray and taken into custody until her master comes to collect her. She cannot work. She cannot leave the house on her own. By all means, she is just a cat that can sometimes speak if she's lucky. Despite this, Catgirl abuse is still a crime. It's quoted at several times throughout the series. Notably, it's quoted alongside the fact that it's gotten better. Presumably, Catgirls are a recent phenomenon that people have gotten more used to, with there now being tighter restrictions to stop people from abusing their Catgirls. This, on top of people with lower economic brackets knowing the financial strain of a Catgirl before they get them, because as mentioned before, it's like having 18 years of a child in food and clothes within 1 year of time, considering how much they eat and grow, that is. But say a Catgirl isn't being abused and is in a loving household. How can she get more independence? Well, that's where we reach the crux of the first volume, the Bell test. So within that first volume, Kasho's goal is to take both of his Catgirls and turn them into legal adults, because they definitely aren't even when aged with cat years. This game is real fun. He does this through a few methods that I'm not allowed to speak about, as well as getting them to do their Bell test. The Bell test is a test that is required for all Catgirls in order to get them their bells, which is kind of like a state ID, but even worse. Imagine if every time you were seen outside without a legal guardian, you would be arrested if you didn't have an ID visibly on you. That is the world that these Catgirls live in, except permanently, because bells can expire and need to be renewed. A bell, or an independent action permit, is a necessity for any Catgirl that wants to become independent. It's needed for pretty much any action that is not directly under the legal control of the Catgirl's owner. It acts as legal identification papers on its own, though to be fair, there are also actual Catgirl identification papers. But the bell is also an accessory that needs to be worn at all times, or they will take the Catgirl into custody because she'll be deemed a stray if she is seen alone without it. Also, the exam to take it is completely absurd. Okay, so hear me out. Imagine you're walking in to get your state ID, and you talk to the guy, and he's asking for your legal name and your address and all the stuff you need, and then just in the middle of a sentence, he throws a fucking right hook at your head, and then stops right before he properly hits you. He pulls back and goes, sorry man, you flinched, I can't give you your ID. That's the kind of shit we're talking about. Bell exams are tests to examine how domesticated a Catgirl is, which is already a really worrying sentence on its own. It is suggested that there is other, more normal test questions involving things like security and traffic and potentially some basic knowledge stuff too, but those aspects probably aren't too intense because Chocula, who can neither read kanji nor count above 10, is able to cleanly complete the test. Domestication is measured by a whole bunch of different factors, almost all of which are base instincts that all Catgirls have that humans don't. The main thing that is expanded upon in regards to the Bell exam within the games is the fact that it's designed to check impulse control. Catgirls shouldn't do things like chase butterflies, purr automatically when scratched, or I guess use their tail to show their emotions. All of these natural behaviors are seen as unacceptable, and you are not given a bell if you cannot restrain them to a great extent. An extent that is shown to be quite hard to reach, as only 10% of catgirls actually pass the exam. Again, something shown to be mostly among those in power who can afford to train their catgirls to pass the exam. Bell exams seem to be controlled by the government, as they vary between countries. For example, the French Bell exam is quoted to be harder. Alright, so hear me out. It's gonna get a little bit weird here, but what if the Bell exam is actually a method to keep catgirls down? It's a tool of oppression, designed to be arbitrary and strict to the extent that no catgirls are ever allowed to be fully independent. In order to integrate with human society, even on the basest level, you need to stop being who you are and become more like us. If we catch you slipping up even after you have your bell, they can just revoke it, because follow-up review exams are mandatory. Each catgirl needs to maintain their status as a being with rights, or they are seen by society as an animal. Even to the few that manage to break the mold, they're still seen that way. Imagine if your driver's license defined your ability to be a citizen. Compared to a bell-less catgirl, a belled catgirl does have a lot more rights, but again, society still sees them as pets. They'll never truly be their own individual. It's like being a child forever. You're not allowed to do anything truly on your own. Your legal guardian, your owner, resides over every choice you will ever make until the day you die. Catgirls, even ones that manage to come close to integrating with society, are property, and if they're not owned by someone, they're not allowed to exist outside of police custody. There's also, of course, catgirl racism, as in there are buildings that don't allow catgirls to enter, and Maple in particular experiences a lot of stigma with her musical career in Volume 3, as I mentioned. But let's step back and talk about what it's like to own a catgirl from the human perspective. So on the surface level, owning a catgirl is somewhat similar to having a daughter, except she acts like a cat most of the time and grows at a similar rate to Bamboo. Owning a catgirl would be like speedrunning having a daughter. You know all the difficulties of puberty? That's happening over 2 months total. You know the terrible twos? That's a month. Raising a catgirl would be the process of raising an infant to a teenager at around 20 times speed. It would be a nightmare to deal with, but hey, when you're not dealing with 20 times the angst, you'd have to deal with training the catgirl to function. Most of the training to get children to act like normal people takes years to do as their brains develop. You'd have to do all that in the short period of time when they're done developing. Keep in mind that the Monarchy family is a really good example of the perfect catgirl environment. They're rich, they have a giant house full of food, and have 4 people willing to work together to raise catgirls. Imagine how many single owners or small low-income families bought a catgirl and just couldn't raise it because of the financial and emotional stress. They don't say this is the reason why, but it is said that catgirl quality of life was horrible in the past, and is just now getting better as of the time of the Nekopara games. So, say you successfully raise a catgirl for the first year. What happens when you have an adult? Well, you now have to deal with an adult dependent with a lot of hoops to jump through if they ever want to join the workforce. A pet that is functionally an adult woman, that's some anime shit right there. Also, keep in mind that the catgirls we see in-game are only so smart, or most of them at least, because the Monarchy family had the resources to tutor and educate them to an extent that they could grow up to be functional adults. If both caretakers had to work at all, that would not be possible, which means that most catgirls are going to end up incapable of reading at best. It was stated offhandedly in the games that several catgirls can't even speak properly, if at all, because they just weren't ever taught proactively to do so. So you have an adult woman speaking with the comparable vocabulary of a 2 to 3-year-old, all while acting like a feral cat. These types of catgirls will probably never join the workforce. It's like owning a caveman and calling them your pet. The Bell exam is a product of this societal issue. It's because the Nekopara society treats catgirls like pets instead of independent functional beings that the Bell exam needs to exist. Because you can't depend on every catgirl owner to raise a catgirl that can function in human society. But hey, you might be wondering about the whole deal with the catgirl sex. The fact that this is a hentai game? Yeah, well, it just so happens that it is completely legal to take a catgirl as your, well, you can guess. Sexual relationships with a catgirl are surprisingly not stigmatized at all, despite You know, the fact that the only ones we see aren't even a quarter of the age of consent? Oh yeah, on that topic, in Nekopara Extra, it's suggested that there is no age of consent for Catgirls because a random villager asks if Kasho is taking the 2 children with him as his catpanions, which is, by the way, the name for this particular type of gross relationship where one of the Catgirls' legal owners takes her as a sexual partner. This is a fun video. God, I sure hope this doesn't irreparably fucking annihilate my analytics, but hey, if my channel must die, I would have it die in the way I see fit, talking about catgirl sex. So to reiterate, catgirls are a race of human-like cats that experience accelerated growth, reaching sexual maturity at around 9 months to a year, which is slightly longer than regular cats who experience it at around 6 months. Catgirls were genetically modified to fit into human society and serve as second-class citizens, or more accurately as pets. Stray catgirls are taken into custody merely for existing, and if a catgirl wishes to become even slightly independent, she needs to complete a very difficult test, which tells her to suppress all of her natural instincts, and which only about 1/10 of the total catgirl population ever actually succeed in. Most catgirls are raised without the ability to read, speak properly, or function on their own outside of basic animal instinct. So now that we have that all lined out, let's discuss a more detailed example of a catgirl lifestyle, specifically those that we see on screen. Let's discuss the Monarchies and their example of an ideal catgirl life. So as mentioned before, the Monarchies are an upper-class Japanese family with an expansive home and 2 nearly adult-aged children with nothing better to do but adopt and take care of several catgirls at once. They are, without a doubt, the perfect family for a catgirl to be adopted into. Not only is there plenty of space, there is also no money or attention problems, as the loneliness that could come from being the single catgirl in a family is negated by there being 6 of them. They are raised with more or less perfect education. Their family has plenty of hand-me-downs as the catgirls grow out of their clothes. There is never any issue with the amount of food they need to consume, and they have as much attention as they could want from their owners and their siblings. But think of how unrealistic this is. How many families will have this much money to spend on catgirls? How many of them will have children willing or able to take care of catgirls as their main hobby? You're essentially adopting a child, but without child protective services existing at all, and also you have to deal with 1 hellish year of growth instead of the 18 pretty bad years of growth. The Monarchies are a very convenient lens to view the world of Nekopara through, because they show us a world in which there are no societal struggles. The Bell exam isn't a monumental rights-preventing oppression mechanism, it's just another thing for the catgirls to do when they reach a certain age. There is no catgirl abuse that we see, there's just the Monarchies and the young catgirl owned by the person who runs the takoyaki shop, who is being brought to work so her owner can properly take care of her. Plus, once Kasho, our protagonist, moves out of the house and starts his own patisserie, all the catgirls have convenient jobs lined up with their own master, and also they all start to fuck him. He takes 6 catgirls as his catpanions, who he also raised more or less as his sisters or daughters. Yep, fun. Kasho's a bit of a shithead, because he's, as mentioned, fucking the people he legally owns, but at least they seem happy about it. The reason why the Monarchy example is such an interesting one to look at is because of the fact that it's so undeniably perfect for the catgirls. There is very little manipulation, and they get to live out their lives as functional members of society, if functional members of society that are legally owned by someone for the rest of their lives without any hope of being freed unless their owner dies, in which case, well, we have no idea, but they'd likely just become a stray if they couldn't find another owner and would get taken away by the police. But wait! There's another member of the Monarchy family that we haven't spoken at length about yet. Well, I've done that for a reason. It's time to talk about Shigure Monarchy, who... Actually, hold on. Let me put on my tinfoil hat here for a bit. Who I think is the most evil character in the series by far. So indulge me for a moment on my unhinged rant within an unhinged rant as I go through the Shigure section. Good evening, Tinfoil Hat Das here. I hope you know as I record this section, I have a tinfoil hat on in real life. Here, I'll even try to jostle it and try to get it to make some noise. I hope that sounded right. The only reason this is a voiceover segment and not a live action segment is because I didn't feel like it. So, Shigure Monarchy, what's her deal? Well, Shigure is the youngest child of the Monarchy family, suggested to be around the age of 14 by the time of Nekopara Volume 1, though technically it's unknown, so don't quote me on that if they ever do confirm it. Shigure is a generally well-composed Japanese girl that seems to be responsible and normal to most people. She wears a kimono most of the time and seems to be the closest thing the Catgirls have to a mother figure, which is kind of fucked up considering that she's Kasho's sister, but also Kasho is the closest thing they have to a father figure, and I'm not gonna get into these dynamics. So let's just sweep all the uncomfortable implications under the rug and continue onwards. Shigure's main personality trait is pretty obvious because it's the only joke they ever tell with her whenever she's on screen, and that is that she is absolutely fucking obsessed with her brother. Like, so obsessed. To tell you how obsessed she is, this young girl stalks her brother to the extent that she seems to have either psychic premonition or a spy network to constantly know where he is. She is capable of stalking him internationally and follows him to France, even learning French to more effectively stalk him. In terms of physical symptoms of her obsession, she has been observed to literally be incapable of calming down without him there. She seems to get a little bit too excited when being pat on the head. You know what I mean when I say that. And she also almost dies of blood loss from a nosebleed after being kissed on the cheek by him at one point. She bleeds to the extent that a pool of blood is stated to form. This girl is completely fucking nuts, and she's apparently been like this since she was born. This behavior is never rationalized or explained. She's just like this. Now, honestly, none of this would be a problem if she was just regular insane. Unfortunately, Shigure is also insanely manipulative. First off, in her own family, she has been shown to be willing and able to lie to her brother and manipulate the Catgirls to get them into a sexual relationship with him. The main and obvious lie she tells is in Volume 1, and it is the lie that Chocolate and Vanilla will die if Kasho doesn't give them a medically approved dose of dick while they're in heat, which is not true at all, and is confirmed not to have been true in that very volume. She is also stated to have convinced Chocolate and Vanilla to sneak into La Soleil in the boxes, so her brother wouldn't be able to escape her. Oh yeah, and later in the series, it is also stated that she has pushed the other Catgirls to make efforts to become Kasho's Catpanions, likely as a way to live vicariously through them. Gross. Also, not to mention, she seems to be normalizing the incestuous behavior within the Monarchy family. Kasho seems more and more comfortable with her downright sexual harassment of him, and even begins to see it as endearing later in the series, which is not good. So she's proven to be insane and manipulative within her own family. How could this get worse? Well, what if I told you she was absolutely loaded and very influential? Yeah. Shigure has proven to be insanely rich despite being in early high school probably. Her main feats that prove her wealth include having the money to build 5 new rooms onto La Soleil without much trouble, entirely out of pocket, as well as being able to construct an entire Wipeout-esque obstacle course in her backyard for a fun off-gag in the anime. Not to mention the aforementioned likelihood of a network of agents paid entirely to spy on Kasho. Have I mentioned the fact that the Monarchies are confectioners, by the way? Where the hell is a girl of this age getting all of this money? Well, it's never really explained, but all of this does suggest something sinister beneath all the anime nonsense. So hear me out. Tightening my tinfoil hat, Shigure has to have a plan, right? It's obvious. Why else would she throw all the Catgirls at Kasho if not for some ideal scenario to come out of it? While she initially says that her plan is simply to have all the Catgirls fuck her brother because she thinks it's cool or something, I don't fucking remember, but it could be that her goal is more insidious. So what if she's crafting this exclusive setting where sex is everywhere, and notably in the family, to normalize this sort of incestuous weirdness that one like her might be able to take advantage of? Not to mention the fact that she's using Catgirls for this. People she legally owns, and while we don't have confirmation, likely have very short lifespans similar to cats. So she has her brother get exceedingly used to the companionship of his Catpanions, and then they die a couple decades later. What happens when that 30-something-year-old man loses not 1, not 2, but 6 romantic partners in the span of a couple years? Well, he'll probably go seek more companionship to fill the void, and that's when Shigure can strike, taking her emotionally destroyed older brother for herself and finally getting what she wants without having to force anything. She's proven to be manipulative before, and we know that Kasho already has a lot of boundary issues, so what's to say she doesn't have something like this planned? She clearly doesn't care about the boundaries her older brother does set, considering how often she steps over them, but realistically, that's just a theory, and there's no fucking way nekoworks is ever going to do that. If they do, the series might actually have even a little bit of passable writing or conflict, and we could pass off all this uncomfortable shit as just like foreshadowing for the evil twist. But there's no way nekoworks is gonna fucking do this or anything close. Nekopara is way too successful for them to do anything risky with it. But it's my fucked up headcanon, and it makes the game a whole lot more fun to analyze and play. At last, we reach the end of our quest, the conclusion. I've told you about the horrors of Nekopara, the societal oppression faced by its race of genetically modified cat people, the incestuous undertones perpetuated by one of its more conniving characters, and the very strange dynamics hidden beneath the veil of anime nonsense. I hope you understand that this video has been in the works for long enough that writing the word conclusion in the script almost made me collapse from relief. Anyways, now that we're here, let me re-describe Nekopara in context with what we've learned. Nekopara is an anime dating simulator that takes place in a world where genetic modification has resulted in a race of cat people that serve as pets to humanity, with barely any freedom to exist outside of servitude. The story of this game focuses on a more well-off family, as Kasho Minataki, when attempting to move out, is stalked and coerced by his sister into entering into a sexual relationship with all 6 of the catgirls he grew up alongside. While it may all end in the series on a happy note each time, and while the conflict may center around simple things like music and feelings and always at least a little bit of sex, this is a hentai game, the hidden truths beneath it all belie a reality we are only seeing the pastel-colored tip of. Now, to be fair, nekoworks absolutely did not have to write their game this way. They could have just made the catgirls regular people who Kasho hires, or I don't know, works alongside, but they're still catgirls, so you still get the fetish bit, instead of just like having them be his pets, but also siblings and daughters at the same time. That part really wasn't necessary. They could have also made them age like regular people, instead of making them like infant to toddler age. So, why did I do this? Well, to be truthful, this video was a project that I had planned all the way back at the genesis of my channel, before my channel actually ended up finding its niche. My high school friends and I used to talk about Nekopara because it was a funny anime game. But when we actually all, played it together, we all sort of cued in on the horrible suggestions the lore was making about its world. If any of you are actually watching this, sorry I made you all wait so long, but, it's out at last. Only took me a couple years. For context, the script document for this video was created on March 17th, 2021. In fact, while I was making this video... Wait, hold on a minute. No, it can't be. You lie! While I was making this video, nekoworks announced a new game called Inupara, featuring dog girls. The game's description states that it's an isekai, or another world story, with a protagonist warped into this world of dog girls. Now, I'm too tired to do a damn thing about this. I'm not even gonna analyze the trailer. It came out on April Fool's, so I really hope it's a joke. But Catboy Paradise also came out on April Fool's, and it's a real game, so it doesn't look like it is a joke. Anyways, I hope you learned something. This video is absolutely going to get demonetized, so I guess if you feel like it, you can go watch my other stuff, or give me money on my mostly inactive Patreon, or you can join the channel membership, I guess. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Hell is real, and I live there. Sorry I kept you all waiting so long, if you ever even were. Alright, bye-bye. Alright, was that enough for you? Are you satisfied with that? Can I go?
No, your pact may be complete, but you will never be free of me.
Are you serious? I already did what you asked.
There is still one more thing for you to do.
You're You're not gonna make me wear cat ears.
Are you sure?
I'm not doing it.
Damn it.